Welcome to another episode of BW People HR Voices, where we bring together leaders shaping the future of work. Manufacturing is no longer just about machines, production lines, or operational excellence. Today, factories are becoming intelligent ecosystems. As organizations race towards Industry 5.0, the real competitive advantage isn't just technology alone, it's also the people. Joining us today is someone who has spent nearly 2 decades of leading people transformation across industries ranging from FMCG, healthcare to energy and industrial automation. Mr. Abhishek Misra, the head of Human Resources India at Rockwell Automation. Welcome, Abhishek. We're very happy to have you today.
Sure, thanks a lot, and I'm privileged to be here today.
Well, starting off on a lighter note before we get into the more serious questions, if you were to walk into a smart factory 10 years from now, what's the one thing you would hope to surprise you, not just about technology, but also about the people working there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be that the factories will become autonomous decision maker or decision making systems themselves. To me, I think it will be not just about systems which are automated or connected. It'll be a whole autonomous decision making, system that will evolve. And I think that will be the biggest surprise, because there they will have much more, I would say, decision making power and authority than we see, today into the system. So that I would say, and to me, I think, it will be what will be some of the features if you ask me of this, autonomous decision making system. It'll be, they will continuously keep analyzing what is the customer demand, what is the supplier delays happening, what are the inventory levels, and they will automatically, do the production scheduling or rescheduling, allocation of parts, ordering of spare parts and all that, depending on what the levels are. So that will be the whole system working autonomously. I mean, that's what will be the biggest surprise, if you ask me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you spoke about this, and I wanted to get right into it after this question. There has been a narrative for years now that what if jobs are replaced by AI? To now, it has shifted to how can AI become a co-pilot to workers and employees, and how do they make them better at their jobs? How do you see that change coming in? How will it affect different hierarchies of an organization? What's your view on that?
So I think what's going to happen is we are transitioning, into Industry 5.0 mindset. To me, that mindset is important. And I would say, if you see in totality, we are not fully transitioned there, right? And so the language has changed, right? But I think, we need to really, from a mindset perspective, and I'll give you an example, what I mean by mindset. So when today, and AI is everywhere, leaders, they talk about, what benefits, they say automation or AI, how many people can they remove, right? I think that language will need to change, that how do we improve productivity through AI, right? So some of those things are about mindset shift to me. And, they're I would say organizations at various phases, and broadly I will bucket them. They're ones, who are optimizers, who are basically using AI to optimize things. That's one group. And, they are the ones who are augmenters, right? And these are the ones, they're growing very fast. And they are talking about the real things, that how AI can make our people more effective, more capable, better decision makers, creative, and all that. And then a very small group, and I think that's what we call as reinventors, right? And they are really, thinking, what task can AI automate, right? And what value that humans can create when AI handles routine work. So they are thinking about a world where AI takes on the routine, and they do a very elevated set of things and really add much more value. So I think broadly, those are the buckets, but it'll take a little time, and I think mindset is the biggest thing I see.
Absolutely. Well, Abhishek, when we talk about the manufacturing sector in India, this year's budget to several announcements that followed was out and out about the manufacturing sector. Make in India, semiconductor investments, smart manufacturing. Now, when this is highlighted, we also see that there is talent shortage in India's industries, and this is across all the industries. right? Do you think it's a talent shortage problem? Do you think it's a talent transformation challenge? And along with that, my second part of the question is, what are some of the capabilities that you say that you think would be very very relevant in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, no, very relevant, I think, question. And I very strongly believe that, it's less about talent shortage, and it basically means that, it's not about the people that we have, but do we have enough people with future ready manufacturing skills? I think the answer to that is that not yet, maybe, right? But that is what, the biggest thing is, right? And one of the things which is doing the rounds is what they call as the manufacturing talent paradox, right? What it really means is that, it's about difficulty in filling the critical roles. It's not there's ample talent, but when you talk about critical roles, there is still difficulty to, fill that. And but whereas, there are, lot of large numbers of, roles available, there are a lot of job seekers, but then they are not ready for those critical kinds of skills. So that's the paradox. On one side, you have huge amount of job seekers, but then you still find, difficulty in filling those critical roles. And that's the manufacturing paradox, I think. Over time, that is what which I think we need to conquer, as organizations, as society, as community, as governments, everything, right?
Right.
And to your other question in terms of, the capabilities, right? Which will, I think, really be shaping and be in demand in future. There'll be, things which I would say be in the realm of things like human and AI manufacturing specialists. These are people who will coexist and work in tandem with AI. I mean,
Right.
that will be a whole together, job role. There'll be things like digital twin engineers, industrial data scientists, or people who are robotics or cobot specialists, right? Uh, Also, and which we have now also, but it will go much deeper. It will be OT cybersecurity experts, semiconductor manufacturing talent. Some of these, I think, will become, skills which will be much more in demand than they are today as we evolve.
Right, right. Well, my next question, Abhishek, is about you personally as an HR leader. What are some of the soft skills that you look for in a candidate that comes? Also, can you take us through some of the learning and development or reskilling initiatives that you're doing at Rockwell?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of soft skills, the biggest thing would be in terms of, I think, one, resiliency, ability to kind of, drive change, manage change at scale, transformation. I think judgment, decision making, creativity. To me, some of these will become paramount and more important, and that's because, all of the things maybe, automation or AI can take care of, but these will be skills which inherently you will need humans to, really well upon. And so they will become, hugely critical. From a Rockwell perspective, I think, we have a, I would say, a very evolved, ecosystem in terms of, how do we prepare our workforce for future, both from the perspective of, the functional technical skills, and also from the perspective of, leadership skills. So we have, a cohort of programs, we call it, leadership foundation program, leadership acceleration, and leadership transformation. And this, caters to, different set of, leaders. But the whole idea is to really get people to develop some of those, I would say, future ready leadership skills, which will be so essential, I think much more than the technical and functional skills, because they can be taught through large, machine learning models or LLMs, right? But some of these softer skills will be inherently human and will continue to be, difficult to develop like they are today. And I think it will become all the more critical because we would then have humans' role to, as I said, to decide, to make, judgments, some of those things, humans will play a very, very important role, more than what they do today.
Right. Well, on the contrary, when you spoke about leadership and resilience as a very important foundation of any future leader, well, with AI coming in impacting entry level jobs specifically, that is inherently a training ground for freshers where they learn how to be in a team, how to have that resilience, agility, judgment, also a better understanding of the business. When those entry level jobs are scraped away with AI, do you think are we risking a leadership vacuum 10 years from now, and how will freshers inherently develop these softer skills?
Yeah, so see, I fundamentally believe that there has to be a balance between that. We cannot entirely wipe out those foundational roles, because they are the ones which feed into the leaders of future. They are the ones who create that pipeline of future leaders. Now, I think what will be important is that how can we really continue to maintain and have those experiences for our entry level talent. These experiences will change. So for example, if today it's about an entry level person trying to work on engineering drawings, tomorrow it will the role will actually change. The entry level role will be a combination of the entry level talent trying to really critically analyze the drawings which are made by systems or automated AI bots. And that becomes critical because they would need to have mastery over those engineering drawings to be able to really figure out what has gone wrong or what are the errors in those drawings. So their role will be a combination of understanding still the basics of the engineering drawing, but also being able to develop themselves to a level where they're able to critically find errors, risks, or any other anomalies in those drawings. And I think as organizations we have to be very careful that we do not end up eliminating all those entry level, but create entry level roles which exist in a combination of human AI environment, which means that these entry level talent will work on roles which are in the combination of say what a human does and what an AI agent does. So I think that balance will be important. And and as I think organizations we grow and learn, our roles at entry level will definitely evolve, right? But I think that balance has to be maintained. That's the key.
Absolutely, very well put. Abhishek, today currently 5 generations are working in the industry altogether. Gen Z, Gen Alpha have very different expectations from what we saw with millennials and the Gen Y. How difficult or easy it is to handle multi-generational workforce? What do you think are the expectation of the young talent today in manufacturing, specifically in the last 5 years, if we compare it to, let's say, the previous 20?
Yeah, so I think let's as we understand the current workforce which is entering into the sector, I think they are one born digital native, we all know, right? They are, I think they are a little impatient, and they are impatient for a past because they want instant outcomes of what they do, because they have been bred on technology where things have happened instantly. You want to understand a comparison between say two choices, you put it a prompt in an AI and it will give you an instant answer. So they have been fed on that. So that's their need of getting quick answers, being impatient. The other piece is that they're very purpose driven, right? And to them, if they don't see something which has a real resonating with their own purpose or their own cause, they may really not allude to that. So to me, I think as organizations we'll have to further deepen in terms of as an organization what our purpose is, keep communicating our larger purpose, our larger vision to these set of employees. Second, I think we'll have to have a very healthy pairing, right, of these early career talent which are entering today and the ones which are from the previous generations, because there's a lot of knowledge transfer which needs to happen. And I think both of them bring a lot of, I would say, inherent value to the organization. One brings a lot of legacy knowledge, having experienced, worked so many years, right, and a lot of I would say critical thinking and judgment. And the early career talent, when paired with such, I would say, experienced talent, would inherently see I would say much better value, because they'll be able to get that knowledge transfer, and also would be able to, I think, get answers to a lot of questions which they would have, because generally this early career talent, they are the ones who are very critical. As I said, they would want to be very clear what they're doing, why they're doing, before they pursue. And all these questions will very well answered by their pairing with experienced folks. So that's the other piece. And I think towards the end, I think we also have to be constantly making sure that while the organization tries to coach them, but we also have a lot of reverse mentoring which we take from these people, which is in the good interest of the organization, because these people are, as I said again, bred in technology, they are digital natives. And we having our experienced talent, getting some reverse mentoring from them, will be on the good interest of our experienced workforce and the organization at large. So I think some of those things will help create a culture where both exist, not because we want them to exist, but because they're complementing each other, right, with the capabilities and the skills that they bring for the organization.
Absolutely. Well, culture and employee experience is also something that's holding Gen Z in the workforce today. It's very important for them today. Any employee experience initiative that you started or has been happening at Rockwell that you have seen success with in the last year, let's say? What
Yeah,
is
I mean, and I can talk about a couple of them.
mm-hmm.
See, at a in Rockwell in India, has been evolving very fast, and we in India are a microcosm of what Rockwell globally is, which means every business unit and function of Rockwell that exists globally has a presence in India, including, by the way, manufacturing, and that's a good story, right? And to me, I think the biggest thing which we try to drive is about the culture of inclusion, right? Where with this immense growth happening, we have people from multiple contexts, multiple I would say experienced backgrounds, multiple functional backgrounds, and whole sort of, and multi-generational as well, multicultural, regional. It's like a potpourri, right? And for us to get the best out of that potpourri is about how can we create a culture where all of them feel belonged and they feel inclusive, right? And so a couple of things which we are trying to do is, one, we have been trying to successfully create some of the employee resource groups, and these are employee run, I would say, communities. And as the word community says, they are communities depending on similar interests and aspirations of people. They come together and form those communities. So there's community which works on what we call as advanced young professionals, right? And this is about all the entry level talent which is entering, be it in engineering, be it in operations, be it in software product development and all. So they keep doing some stuff in terms of really either it's about trying to arrange visits for our customers, trying to say arrange cultural fairs or some of those kind of events. Similarly, we have other ERGs called Rockwell Automation, supporting women engineers. We have a lot of women engineers entering the workforce, and they come together in terms of what aspires them as a common entity, right? We have another one called parents and caretakers, and it's about all caretakers, whether you're doing, caretaking need for kids, children, or for elderly, or for, some special needs. All of those people, who are interested are common, they come together, and these communities are really thriving because they give a purpose, to people beyond just work, right? So to me, that's one thing which has been flourishing. The other piece which we have been really kind of, going very good at with is what we call as flex teams. Now, flex teams are nothing but these are marketplaces where anybody can come and post a project or a problem, real business problem, and ask anybody across the organization to raise their hand for a couple of weeks of assignment. And so it's a great opportunity for somebody to say experience. Somebody wants to say experience what's digital, and there's a small flex team assignment posted there. He or she goes and applies for that, maybe works on that with a very diverse kind of team drawn from very different views and functions, 4 to 6 weeks. And great way to build a capability by doing rather than by reading or attending, say, a seminar or an online webinar. So I think that's really doing good. Again, if you link back to the generation which is entering, they would rather want to get their hands dirty and get some real experience, instead of just going through some online, I would say, webinars and all. And this is giving them that real opportunity. So this is working fine. Another one, and I can keep going, but I'm just talking about the ones which I think are really creating impact. Another one is what we call as KYB, or Know Your Business. And this links to the fact that we have multiple different views and functions in India. And a lot of times somebody who's part of a BU may not know what's exactly happening in the other one. And so we have kind of created KYB almost like a TED Talk platform where we invite business leaders, and in fact, by the way, as we speak, we're right now in the 7th season of it. We invite business leaders and say that, hey, talk about, what you are doing in your business or function, how, your business or function is adding value to the enterprise. And, if somebody wants to make a career here, what are some of the tips and tricks? What can people do to know more about what you're doing? Simply. And this has been a great hit because people have come back saying, hey, I never knew that, in Rockwell Automation, we do this as well. And, this session was amazing. I've already sent a request, to so and so to know more about. I think I'm interested. I want to know more about this. I think all this is creating, again, a culture where I think everybody, as I said, feels inclusive. We're trying to break barriers through KYB, bringing everybody together. It's not that you work in function A, so you need not know anything. You actually, we are creating opportunities for them to grow beyond their own vertical or function. And of course, ERGs are giving them purpose beyond work. So some of this, I think, is really creating the culture which I think is helping us thrive.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Really nice to know what Rockwell is doing in the space. And I really like the Flexi program that you have because it does give exposure of different departments as well. Before we get into the rapid fire, let me end the discussion on a broader leadership question. Nearly every CEO today, they talk about their company becoming an AI first company, but very few they speak about the urgency of becoming a learning first company. Now, if you had to advise CEOs in India today on one investment that would deliver greater long-term returns than technology itself, what would it be and why?
No, absolutely. I think, I would suggest that, it has to be a learning first environment, right? Learning agility. And the reason for that is that in today's world, technologies are evolving very fast. A technology which is relevant today may get superseded by another technology tomorrow. So to be relevant, I think you have to constantly unlearn and keep relearning, unlearn and relearn. And so which makes the learning agility as I think the best bet and the most important thing to focus on. And of course, AI will be there, but AI can be put best used in terms of how we can have an environment where AI can enable this learning, right? Rather than being, sitting standalone. So to me, environments where, we constantly create opportunities where AI enabled learning, becomes, I think the foundation. To me, that's the most important thing and advice which I would like to give.
Thank you. Well, now we move on to the rapid fire round. One word responses only. All right. One word that defines the workforce of 2030.
I would say ever ready.
One leadership trait becoming obsolete today.
I would say, breathing on the neck.
All right. One leadership capability becoming indispensable.
Empathy.
Degree or skills?
Skills.
Hire for attitude or hire for capability?
I think hire for attitude.
Right. Factory of the future in one word.
Smartest factory.
One HR practice you would retire forever.
Manual processes, forms, all that.
One AI tool every HR leader should learn.
I think it is about, ideation on, how can we better ideate.
Books or podcasts, your current favorite?
My favorite are books, but sometimes if time is short, podcasts are good to summarize things.
All right, finish this sentence. The future of work belongs to
those who are ready to unlearn and relearn.
On that wonderful note, thank you so much, Abhishek, for joining us and a wonderful candid conversation with you. Hope to interact with you super soon for more such conversations. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. It was a privilege.